When it came to this game Dispatch, I was initially going to do a review on the first 2 episodes and then a final review upon the title being feature complete. I decided to refrain from the initial impressions and wait for the whole experience to come out so I can dissect the entirety of what this game has to offer, for better or worse. Dispatch is the first game developed by the newly formed studio AdHoc Games. Formed from the ashes of the original Telltale, this game shares a lot of DNA with Telltale games of old. It is interesting to note that upon research into the studio's founding and the development of this title, that you find that this was originally meant to be a live-action TV show. Now don't get me wrong, I can imagine that sort of approach working in some capacity, but it would strike me as something that would be needing quite an investment financially and also general experience in TV production, which the studio clearly at the time didn't have. It seems the pandemic was a sticking point in their development pipeline, which ultimately made them go back to the drawing board and subsequently go about this project as a video game instead of it being a TV show, and more in the vein of original Telltale related titles. By that I mean episodic in nature and a 2-episode weekly cadence for its releases. Now in the grand scheme of things, I feel that the releasing structure helps with this style of game, but all in all I think it hinders this title a little bit more, but I'll get to that later in the review. So a brief synopsis of the plot, as I'm going to be trying my best to be as spoiler free as possible. Most of the footage will be from within the first episode or trailer released footage of the title, alongside gameplay segments that aren't spoilers but more talk about the game's mechanics. Dispatch is set in an alternate Los Angeles where superheroes and supervillains exist and are commonplace. Society has split them between supers, self-explanatory, and normies, or people without powers. In this world, most but not all superheroes work for a singular organization, the Superhero Dispatch Network, or SDN for short, which provides services and protections for their subscribers. You play as Robert Robertson, a normie who used to have a superpowered suit handed down through generation to generation under the name Mecha Man. An incident occurs one day and renders the suit entirely inoperable. A superhero called Blonde Blazer offers you an opportunity to still help people and on the side try to restore the suit to its former glory. Now of course I've missed quite a few certain details there, but this is just basically a brief rundown of the plot. And the plot itself has a lot going for it, I'll give it that much. The story is well written, the pacing is on point, and you never really feel like there is too much padding in between story beats. I think the developers really nailed a good structure on story to gameplay for the most part. Some episodes feel like they shine way more than others, but a lot of that lends itself to the tried and true cliffhanger approach to its storytelling. Every week we got 2 episodes released, with 8 in total. You always felt at the edge of your seat every second episode, making you wish next week rolled around. But this also lies in one of the game's also weaknesses, the runtime. Each episode in total is roughly around 50 to 80 minutes at most, depending on decisions, gameplay approach, etc. Now compared to say Telltale games of old, which I would say probably roughly varied around the 90 to 120 minute mark as a sort of minimum baseline. Sometimes it just feels like it's over before it's really even begun. Now I would say that maybe this game would have benefited from being maybe released all at once, but at the same time its structure does benefit from that episodic or weekly release. It would be more jarring going from episode to episode with the way their cliffhangers are structured and embedded into the story. So let's take a step away from the story and let's talk about visuals. It's hard to comment on graphics, so to speak, as this isn't necessarily a game, it's more of an interactive movie, so most of the visuals outside of actual gameplay segments, which I'll get to later, is primarily video. Now while you watch it, I do think the art style is nice. It feels like the 1980s in some part crossed with modern day for the setting. I would say Dispatch most reminds me of some of those Netflix animations you see cropping up here and there, but it's much more fluid in terms of animation execution. The voice work is also top notch and delivered fairly well, even with some of the talent coming from famous Twitch and YouTube stars. You have the likes of Laura Bailey, Travis Willingham and Matt Mercer as well, courtesy of Critical Role helping AdHoc Games, and also in regards to the overall publishing of this title. There are some cringy moments, but for the most of it, it hits well. I think it will stand the test of time and not quite carbon date the era the game is made. You know, when games or even movies just lay on current era subject matter or trends and it really takes you out of the immersion at like what the medium is meant to provide for you. So outside of visuals and audio being for the most part rock solid, let's go into the gameplay side of this game. Dispatch provides, which are, I believe, 3 things: multi-choice dialogue trees, the dispatching of heroes, and a hacking minigame. The different dialogue choices in this game are, as you expect, very Telltale inspired and overall lead to different routes or endings per episode. Generally, I think there is usually two paths you go down, and I won't imply what they are, but it is rather restrictive, and I would say a lot of choices don't really offer anything sort of meaningful or change much of an outcome. At most, you are talking about a sentence or more of a change. While I said the game is primarily video, there is options to add interactions to it. It at least gives the illusion of something to contribute in action-packed moments, even though you missing a prompt doesn't affect anything whatsoever. I suppose it's appreciated as an option, even though it's disappointing in its execution. Also to note, there are multiple accessibility options for people playing or streaming the title, with being able to change the music to royalty free, for instance, cover nudity and bleep swear words, all in which are nice touches and can help push this game out more to those streaming spaces. Now onto the core meat of the game, which is dispatching heroes. As a superhero dispatcher, it is your job to dispatch heroes to crises displayed on the map. Your goal is to pick and choose the perfect fit for the job while managing characteristic traits and cooldowns. Doing a good job nets said heroes EXP, and upon getting enough, level up and gain a skill point which can be used to bolster their predetermined stats. If a mission were to fail, a hero gets injured, in which they suffer a hit to their stats, and upon another fail are downed and out for the count, making your management of said heroes much trickier. There are moments where one wrong decision can cost you a hero, and which can subsequently spiral into a multitude of bad outcomes, but it's mostly easy to avoid these trappings. You do get perks later in the story that can help remedy these aspects, so it's all about managing the team effectively. Initially, the gameplay loop is rather simple and sort of barren, but it does open up later with team synergy, hero training, which gives said heroes a new perk, and more trickier decisions as well, which can affect multiple heroes. Overall, the loop is okay. I do feel like it doesn't do enough alone to really hold the game long term, and by episode 8 you feel like you just want to be having the dispatching done with, just so you can continue to experience the well-written and crafted narrative. On top of dispatching heroes, there will be moments when you are also able to hack into systems as Robert. Most of the time it is just going from point to point and putting in directional prompts. Later you have additions like antiviruses that chase you, and you have to avoid them and shock them with well-placed current boxes, or having to remember passwords because it hides what the prompts are, so sometimes you have to write stuff down, which is nice, but it doesn't really add overall like too much to the game, so it feels pretty lackluster. So there isn't really too much to talk about in terms of gameplay wise beyond that. There is replayability in the sense of watching how different dialogue is delivered, but when I say it doesn't really impact the wider narrative, there isn't really much meat on the bone to go back and discover. I would say at most go back and look at what both core story routes provide, as I feel like there is just two, but don't expect too much of a difference narratively long term. I think Dispatch's biggest problem is being essentially a glorified TV show masquerading as a game, and part of me wonders if down the line Netflix games will get this title where you only get the decision making dialogue and the dispatching / hacking minigame is just entirely removed. I really do feel like this would work as a show on most streaming platforms, and I do think they should consider doing that to kind of bolster their audience for potentials into a second season. I will however miss the ability to walk around and interact with objects like in the world as old Telltale games did, but at the same time Dispatch seems to trim the fat in favour of a focused narrative, which is a blessing and a curse. I would have loved to have been able to walk around the offices of the SDN and talk to some of the employees and other characters within the world, but alas that seems unlikely to become true. Even if this game gets a season 2, and I know they have been reportedly talking about it, I don't feel like it would deviate too much from the formula as provided now. I do feel gameplay needs to be a bit more involved and varied if we do come back with a season 2. Overall though, I did enjoy my time with this game. I like the setting, the visuals, the characters, and the story for the most part. There are two clear paths to choose from for the story, and while I like both, I feel like there needed to be more meaningful decisions peppered throughout. There are too many decisions that don't really impact anything, so really water down the experience. The biggest crutch for me was just the gameplay being really underbaked. I don't think the dispatching and hacking minigames have enough variety or mechanics to hold their own, and feel almost like late additions to gap out the story cutscenes. I will recommend this title, however, to anyone who has played a Telltale game before, as this is the closest thing you're going to get to something like this for a while. Looking towards you, Wolf Among Us Season 2. So what do you think of Dispatch yourself? Have you played it, and does this review encourage you to make that purchase? Let me know in the comments below, and if you liked the video, give a like, subscribe and hit the bell notification so you can keep up to date when my next video goes live. And if you're watching this on another one of my socials, a follow there would also do wonders too. I hope you all have a pleasant day, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye for now.